On this episode of Purposely Curious, we discuss the author Lewis Carroll's inspiration for one of the most famous books in children's literature, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. This was shocking to me, but Leone did bring up the point that this was in the Victorian era, so it may not be as eerie as I see it to be. But you be the judge and tell us what you think. So let's get to this controversial topic. So get nice and cozy as this episode starts now. Hello, Leone.
Greetings, Mary. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing on this beautiful rainy day in LA?
I'm doing well. I'm wet, actually.
Are you?
Yeah.
Oh, how so?
I was out in the rain like 20 minutes ago.
Oh, doing what? If you don't mind me asking, I'm so nosy.
I was out to dinner with my best friend. He came by and he's like, "Hey, you want to go grab dinner tonight?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure. I just gotta be back by 8:30. And he's like, "Sure." So we went out to just a few miles north of where I live into the foothills, a community called Montrose, and they have a place called Black Cow Cafe. Actually, you and I've been there.
Yes. Have we?
Yes, we have.
Oh, yes. We have.
Mary doesn't remember anything she does with me, people.
Oh, stop it.
She's like, "You really?"
Oh, you're playing the victim.
But no, we had a nice dinner. It was raining out, so then I just got dropped off and got a little wet because it's really pouring out here, but the weather is nice. It's nice and therapeutic, I would say.
Yeah. What's the temperature out there right now?
I think it's about, let's see, what is it? It's 49 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
So it's cooling down. It'll probably get to 47 tonight, I'm sure.
Yeah.
The nice thing about the rain is it doesn't go anything lower than that. But if it stops raining tomorrow, then that means tomorrow night's going to be cold,
Yeah. That's usually how it is. But you being kind of close to the foothills, it's like a lot colder.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's like been raining out here and I don't know. So this is like we called it, what is it? A cyclone? Boom cyclone?
So, there were a couple of cyclone, I think they call them cyclone bombs, right?
Bombs.
Yeah.
I'm like booms. So I guess it's like it started raining in December out here. So it's been consecutive 3 weeks. But these storms here, they have been very windy in comparison to what we're used to. We're used to like a rain, the storm comes and goes. There's not a lot of wind. Maybe it's cold after, or maybe it is windy after. But these have been like gusts between 30 to 50 miles per hour during the rain, so that we've seen hail, flooding. But we've been getting 2 inches up to 5 inches a day, depending on where you are. The mountains tending to get more.
Right.
And so our sewage systems, the state of California is huge. If you want to drive from San Diego to Sacramento, that's like a 9-10 hour drive.
For sure. Easily. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're hearing all these stories and how some places it's worse than other places. And, here in LA, it's more, there's a lot of trash everywhere. So the flooding comes from the trash getting stuck in the water, not having anywhere to go into the sewage drains. But these storms are really out of the ordinary, and they move east, right? East, north, east, south. Yeah. And they become worse inland with tornadoes. I heard they had like a shitload of tornadoes from the stuff we're getting.
Yep. Yeah.
That's
so
crazy.
The Midwest will get tornadoes, or Colorado will get a bunch of snow, and then when you get to the East Coast, it's like, and they get crazy winds and snow. I mean, rain again,
Like blizzards, yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So be ready for these next storms, guys, over there in the East Coast.
It's coming.
Apparently it's coming, but apparently they weren't as strong as last week's.
Right.
For us. So maybe that's a good thing for you guys, since you guys get the other extreme of it. But those who are not too familiar with California, we've been in a drought because we wouldn't get so much rain. So a lot of the lakes were kind of drying up, which is, the cycle of life on Earth, right?
Right.
There's been the ice age, droughts, you name it. It's climate change is constant, right? But now it seems we have too much water. So there's a bunch of hills falling apart.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy, but it definitely much needed. Whether
Definitely.
we like it or not. I think you like it. You want it to continue.
I do, but you know what? I would actually like a 3 day break or 4 day break.
Yeah, which we haven't been getting.
Yeah, we have nothing. But when we do get those breaks, what happens is you go out there and everything's green.
Yeah.
The hills where I live are they're green. Like you think it's a fantasy movie. You know,
Yeah.
so I mean, but yeah, it's just it's just like right now everything's flooded. Like I'm walking through the streets, there's puddles of water everywhere, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I just wish we had a system to collect all this useless water so that we wouldn't have a drought, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And if it would not go to drinking, at least it would go to the farmers who are also suffering in Central Coast, you know,
Yeah.
and or Central Valley, should I say, because that's where our crops come from, you know. So we just,
Yeah.
you know, it's like we don't think about those things, and by we I mean like our governor, you know, and they always like to, you know, brag. It's like, oh, we got 90 billion surplus. I'm like, well, great. Build these tanks to hold this water because we're gonna need it next year when there is no rain, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Someday somebody will figure it out. Somebody smart, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Good luck with that, right?
Yeah. Government, ladies and gentlemen, the lowest form of thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll see. But what I did hear, and that is that after tomorrow, it seems like we're going to have a pretty dry rest of the month.
Don't you
A
tease
chance
me.
of, apparently there could be a chance of rain, but it
Don't you
seems
do
like
it.
it's going to be clear. So it's going to look beautiful
Don't you
by
tease me.
next weekend.
Don't you tease me, girl.
Mm-hmm.
No, when I can't wait because when it is, I'm gonna go spend some time at Descanso Gardens.
Maybe I'll join you.
Yes.
It's so pretty.
Yeah. All the flowers will be, well, not flowers. The plants will be green at least.
Yeah. It'll be really pretty.
Yeah.
Really, really pretty. So, did you know what I wanted to talk about today? Kind of told you.
You kind of told me, but I don't know.
So, have you heard of Charles Ludwig Dodson? Oh my God, what is wrong with me?
Oh my God, we don't have all night. Come on, just don't ask that question.
So I cannot pronounce his last name. Dodgson. Okay.
She has
Sorry,
Tourette's,
guys.
ladies and gentlemen. She has Tourette's.
He has an alias, or, that he used to go as an author, and his name was Lewis Carroll. Have you heard of Lewis Carroll?
Yes.
You have. So he wrote Alice's Adventures in Wonderland.
Right.
Or Alice in Wonderland, how a lot of us know the
Right.
story as. Leone, what's your first memory of Alice in Wonderland growing up?
Oh my God. Oh, I mean, aside from the movie,
It's whatever your memory is.
I don't.
I mean, for me, it's it's literally the movie
I mean, it's the movie
from Disney.
but it's also Disneyland,
Ah, yes.
and I think it's probably mostly the movie for sure for me.
Yeah, so it's the same with me, right? Disneyland, the Disney movie of
Right.
Alice in Wonderland. The characters, right? So when you think of this movie, or this story, you think of something wholesome, right?
Right.
I remember growing up and thinking like, oh, I wonder if the person who wrote it was like high, because you would hear like, stories of like caricature people from Disney or other companies, like drawing inappropriate things,
Right.
or having a second meaning as far as like psychedelic type
Yeah.
shit. Like that's what I remember hearing. So I had never heard any of these stories that I am about to talk about, or the story behind
Oh.
the story. And let's just say right? That when I heard about this, I don't necessarily like it anymore. It's kind of creepy.
Mm.
Have you heard anything about it, the author?
I have not, because you know what? I think I was just so invested in the filmmaking,
Mm-hmm.
and like have you heard of all the rumors about the hanging? Oh my God, what are they called? The little people.
The Hanging?
Yeah, there was one that was dead that's hanging.
No.
There's a version of the movie where you see one hang. What are they called? The Munchkins?
What isn't that? Well, I don't know.
Oh my God, what am I thinking of?
Are you thinking of another movie?
Um, no, it's the Munchkin. Yeah,
Mm.
there was a Munchkin deck. There was a suicide, and like you could look it up. If there's a scene in the movie where you see the silhouette of a hanging Munchkin in the background,
Is
and
this the Disney one?
yeah, and it only exists in one version of the film. Like you can't buy it anymore. Like it's been edited, it's been taken out, and people say that, oh, it's not what you think it is. It's something else. So when it came to those conspiracies of that, and
Mm.
the lead actress, what's her name?
No, so this is the one, the Wizard of Oz.
Why am I thinking of the Wizard of Oz?
Yeah. I just looked it
Wrong
up, guys. I used
movie.
Google.
I am
And I do see it.
I'm so off track here.
Oh, don't even worry about it.
Okay, wrong movie. So no, I'm not thinking of. I'm not thinking of this. I don't have a good memory of, except for the movie.
Yes. But before I get into that, and since you mentioned this, it does appear that yes, a human did hang himself from a tree,
Yes.
and it was removed from the movie.
Yeah.
But because
Wizard
it
of
was so
Oz.
long ago, yeah, because it was
Yeah.
so long ago, there's still debate to this day, but it's obviously in the background.
Yes.
Huh.
But Alice in Wonderland. Yes.
Yes. So basically, like I was saying, all of us kind of grew up with this story. You and I have the Alice in Wonderland memories of
Right.
the Disney movie, the cartoon movie. And, if you go to Disneyland or, I don't know about now, but back then it was, Alice in Wonderland, you got the teacups, which are
Right.
famous, right? So all of us think of it as a wholesome, again, type of backstory to it. And, children still play with these things, right? There's been many adaptations of this movie, right? So the author, so his name is Ludwig Dawson, right? He wrote it, and like I said, when I heard the backstory, I don't like this book anymore. So he studied photography and mathematics at the University of Oxford in England.
Right.
And Mr. Dawson used the pseudonym of Lewis Carroll for his writings. So he would also write. So he was like an artsy guy compared to like now, right? He did photography,
Right.
he painted, and now he's also an author. And so he is the author to his first book, which was named Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, which is about a girl, as we all know, who falls into this hole and meets all these beautiful or weird animals and creatures. And the book was published in November of 1865 by Macmillan Publishing. So he was praised for the book, and as we know, this was more than 150 years later, it's still like a big hit, right?
Right.
So apparently he was inspired by this little girl that he met named Alice Little. So did you know that Alice was a real, inspired by a real little girl?
No, I didn't know that.
Yes. So he met Alice Little and her sisters on April 25th, 1856, while they were playing outside. He was 24 at the time when he met them. So he met these little girls. Dawson used to write in his journal daily or diary daily, which back then people did, people would just write on their journals, their diaries daily, kind of like how people do social media now. That
Right.
was what they did back then. And so a lot of this information was found by biographers studying him and his work. And so he basically, when he met these little girls, the little sisters, he wrote in his journal that it had a very special significance to him when he met them. And he met them while he was taking pictures, and the little girls were playing outside, and they kind of saw, like, oh, what is he doing, right? Like, cameras were new, so they were probably like, oh, what are you holding? What is the contraption? So
Right.
he started talking to them. And so he took kind of a liking to the little girls and started a friendship with them. So he then, because he was a photographer, started photographing the little girls, the little sisters, right?
Right.
And he would put them in like cute outfits, and then like it was very artistic if you look at it. It's like that awkward pose of the 1800s, right?
Yeah.
And so they were clothed in like costumes. There was themes to the photographs. And again, keep in mind he met them in 1856, so they were really, really young. One day he took the little girls on a boat ride, which was a few years later at this point, on July 4th of 1862 to be exact. And on that boat ride, Alice was 10 years old. Her sister was 8 years old, and her older sister was 13 years old, right? So what is he doing on a boat with 3 girls? Well, he's on the boat with them. He starts telling them the story of Alice, he used Alice, his favorite friend,
Right.
girlfriend, to tell the story of Alice in Wonderland, which is what we know now. The little girls loved it so much that the 10-year-old Alice asked him if he could write it down for her. So he wrote it down. So he came up with the story on the go, like on the fly, while he was trying to keep the girls entertained, right? And so he then wrote it down because Alice liked it so much, and he made it into a manuscript of the story. And that's how we get Alice in Wonderland, is because he was on a boat with underage girls, right? And told them the story, and the little girl really liked it. So now fast forward to historians and biographers studying his journals, Dawson's journals. They noticed that he wrote about that he would meet a lot of little girls, and he started friendships with them, but that Alice was his favorite. So he had a tendency to make friendships with underage girls that were from the age of 6 till about 14.
Jeez, that's young.
Yes, but again, because times were not how they are now, right? They wouldn't write so, like, I guess the writing is more romantic, if that makes any sense. But I'm going to read you some excerpts as we continue, and you tell me what your opinion is, right? So how are you feeling right now?
I'm intrigued, that I'm scared. I don't know if my virgin ears want to hear some of this stuff.
Well, so biographers noticed as they continued to read his journals, right, and diaries, is that he seemed to be fascinated with girls, especially of the age 10 to 15-year-olds. So they started looking at his photography and artwork more closely, and they noticed that although most of his work had been lost, somewhere, what they did have showed that a lot of these pictures that they did have and portraits that he had painted constituted mostly of undressed or semi-undressed little girls. Mm-hmm. So biographers are scratching their head, right?
Okay.
Because they don't want to believe yet that we may have some weird, creepy pedophile on here. But in one of his journal entries, he writes, and I'm quoting, "A girl about 12 is my ideal form of beauty form." If someone told you that now,
I mean, that to me, that's just creepy as hell,
Mm-hmm.
However, this is the year of 1860,
Let's say 1850s, 1860s.
1850s.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the women were marrying young back then, right? 14, 15.
Yeah.
So the possibility of a 12-year-old girl looking like a 14-year-old, 15-year-old.
Back then?
Yeah. Possibilities pretty good if they're working on the farm, if they're, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's possible that that age blends in with 13, 14, 15, 16, you know what I'm saying? But today it's just downright wrong and creepy, you know, but back then there were no laws about that, right? And
No.
depending where you came from, not just the country, but if you're, you know, on a farm, prairie farm or whatever, it's like, I think girls were bred and taught that at a certain age, they would be given up so that she can marry into, you know, to a man, to a family and provide and whatever. And I think often that was young, you know, and that's, so yeah, to me, it's very, very creepy, but at the same time, it's like,
Yeah.
probably not as shocking as one would think because of the year, you know?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you bring that up because one of his most famous pictures back then was of Alice when she was 6 years old. She appears as a beggar girl and in a position that is posed almost like in an adult manner. So, what do you have to say about that? Is that normal?
That, I mean, that's like an adult, like in a sexual manner.
Yeah, an adult posing, yeah. Semi-nude.
Yeah, that's creepy.
She's 6 years old at this point. Okay. I'm going to leave that out there. So he was very open and bold about his intentions, even though biographers still didn't want to accept it. And by that, it's like a lot of the stuff that he would write were very, very creepy. Right?
Yeah.
One of his little girl, and I'll put it in quotations because he used to call them friends, right? Mailed him a lock of her hair, which he wrote back to her because back then, remember, everyone saved everything, letters,
Right.
everything. This is what she wrote, or this is what he wrote to her, okay? And word for word. Extra thanks and kisses for the lock of hair. I have kissed it several times for want of having you to kiss, you know, even hair is better than nothing.
And she's how old at this time?
I believe it's a 10-year-old girl.
Oof. God, that's
Dun, dun,
so,
dun.
yeah, that's just so wrong, so creepy on so many levels, you know?
Yes. So in another letter to one of his colleagues, he writes, now this is a colleague, someone who's an adult, right? And he writes, I confess I do not admire boys in pictures. They always seem to need clothes, whereas one hardly sees why the lovely forms of girls should be covered up.
Gosh.
So apparently none of this triggered red flags because of what you said. The times were different and maybe people thought he was...
And also what country?
Artist, England.
Yeah. So I don't know the English laws at that time, if they were strict or not.
Yeah.
You know, so it's possible that they could have been even more liberal than we were here in founding, you know, in young America, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But it's just so weird, you know?
Yeah. And the thing is that apparently everyone kind of knew that he was always surrounded by little girls. But again, no one thought anything of it, right? So when he died, even his obituary read, like many bachelors, he was very popular with children and fond of them. That was in his obituary. Isn't that crazy? Now, you're on the computer. Can you look up the pictures of some of these girls? They're not per se like naked. They're not like risque, like they like porn like now, but you can tell the little girls have no business posing in those manners.
Right.
And not all of them are online or anything, but they do. There are some online that are kind of posted, you know, in questioning, was he a pedophile or was he not? So his nephew, Stuart, wrote a biography of his uncle, like after he died, where he stated that he was known to regularly hug and kiss girl children, like female children.
Right.
So again, it's normal that he's always kissing girls, taking pictures of them, undressed or semi-undressed. I mean, it seems like, I don't know. It's creepy for me.
Oh, totally.
Yeah. One biographer who read his entire diaries. Now, they are in the University of Oxford, I believe, the museum out there. And that he stated, and it was his opinion that, he was really fascinated and obsessed by Alice Little, who is the inspiration of Alice in Wonderland. And that he usually in his writings seemed disturbed and needing or having trouble sleeping when he'd, like, let's say he had seen her this morning, he couldn't sleep at night and he would write in his diary.
Jeez.
So he was really obsessed with her. And in one, tell me if this isn't bad or not. Now this should leave everyone with no question. Once he mentioned he was afflicted by the inclinations of his sinful heart, and he managed it by doing mathematics, which helped his unholy thoughts. So he knew they were wrong.
Yeah.
So now it's like, okay, there's got to be no question. The question is, did he act on them? And that's what we don't know.
Yeah, that is strange. I mean, it's, then you wonder, like, where are these girls? Where are their families? Where's the parents,
Mm-hmm.
Like, who are they? Like, were they orphans? Like, why are they being left alone with this guy,
So apparently Alice Little and her sisters, who were always with him, I think the family worked for Oxford. So I know in that sense they, that's how
They
he
were just
kind of met them.
always around, I guess.
Yes.
And it was just because it's the same college building or campus. They were just like, oh yeah, let's go play, and they were disappearing with him.
Mm-hmm.
That's so bizarre.
So again, here he is. He met her when she was 6, right? And she's now like 10 or 11. So look at how many years he saw her every day almost. That's weird too, right?
Yeah, that's weird.
And I say her, but he was also seeing the sisters. There was 3 of them. So, and in his journals and diaries, he made other friendships with other children, but in 1863, it is well documented that Alice and her sisters stopped socializing with him abruptly, per multiple sources. But there's no concrete reason why. No one knows. There are rumors that this rift was because he may have, wanted to marry Alice. And so I think at this point she would have been like 10 or 11. And again, these are rumors, right? But after he died, remember how I told you he had all these journals and diaries, and he was already famous for his photography, for his artwork,
Right.
and for the book. The family kept his diaries and journals, and from that time of 1863, there's pages missing, and you can tell that they're ripped out. And so a lot of people are wondering if the reason for the rift is in those pages that were taken out by his nieces.
Oh, that's interesting. Like they're trying to cover up the whole thing.
Yes. At least we don't know what the falling out was.
God, so weird.
Yeah.
I mean, I wonder what happened to Alice. Like, who did she grow up to be?
Well, I'll tell you.
Oh, shit. Damn, girl.
I know.
I feel like I'm watching 2020 now.
Oh, my God.
Investigative reporter.
Oh, please, I wish. But, okay, so the theory is that maybe he wanted to marry Alice, but we don't know. There was also another theory that maybe he was into one of her other sisters, right? Regardless, they're underage, right? So sometime later, their friendship was rekindled and he started to see them again. And now Alice was 12. So keep in mind, he was taking pictures of her when she was 5, 6.
Oh, God, yeah.
And he wrote in his diaries and journals how he was fond of her at that age, right? That she was his favorite muse, his favorite friend,
Right.
right? And then we hear this other girl send her lock of hair that's not Alice, and he was like, "Oh, I'll kiss it. It's not you, but I'll kiss it. This'll do. It's better than nothing," right?
Right.
Then he writes, I have sinful thoughts, and I do mathematics to rid me of these unholy thoughts, whatever. I mean, as far as we know, we don't know if he acted on any of this. But what was he doing on a boat with 3 underage girls? Unsupervised. We don't know, right?
Right.
So they rekindled their friendship, and now Alice was 12 years old, right? And in his journal, Dawson wrote, he had the nerve to write that she had changed as a person and wasn't the same Alice.
What?
Yeah, at the age of 12.
Huh.
So apparently as the years, passed and Alice grew tired of him and his obsession, he last photographed Alice Little for the last time when she was 18 years old in 1870.
Oh gosh,
and
she's
in that picture,
she's an old hag at that time. 18. She's too old for
check
him.
this, and that's the last photograph he ever did of her. And at that age, she's fully dressed. Remember, most of his work, although a lot of it was lost, was of undressed girls or semi-undressed girls, right?
Right.
She's fully dressed, looks older, still looks young though, right? Because girls look older now in our time, right?
Yeah.
Like makeup, you name it. She still looks young, but she even looks like annoyed or sad or tired in the picture. It's not like the other pictures where she seemed happy, she was posing, inappropriate in some of them. And apparently that was like the last time that he photographed her. So Dawson, Mr. Lewis Carroll, as a goodbye, gave her the book of the original manuscript of Alice in Wonderland, or the Alice's Adventures in Wonderland is what it was called. And so she kept it. She went ahead and married this athlete, and they had 3 boys, one of which she named Carroll. When asked if it had anything to do with Dawson, which his alias for author was Lewis Carroll, she said it was total coincidence, but one of her sons was named Carroll. When her husband died, she sold the original manuscript to use that money for upkeep to the house because she was like a stay-at-home mom.
Right.
And also she had stated in interviews that she was tired of being Alice. But she never really spoke about the relationship. But there's, again, all the diaries and journals, right? The pictures. So the debate now is, yes. So everyone agrees he had unholy, sinful thoughts of underage girls.
Right.
But there's nothing written or documented that he ever acted on it. But to me, I'm sure he did. He must have. Or do you think he just had that free will of I'm not going to think about it, but I'm going to pose them either naked or semi-naked in these pictures? And again, most of his work is missing, right?
Right.
And 2, it's the nieces ripped out certain pages of where that rift between Alice and him happened, where it was abrupt, and the family said, "No, you guys aren't talking anymore." We don't know what happened. The family never talked, his side never talked, and those pages in the diary/journal are missing, which would probably shed some light on what happened. And she was only 10, dude.
God, that's so crazy.
So, now tell me, how does that make you feel about the story of Alice in Wonderland?
I mean, the story doesn't change because it has different meaning. It's for me, it's the writer. You know what I'm saying? It's not. He's not a writer that I thought of as oh, he's genius. He's the best.
Yeah.
To me, it's just oh, he wrote that book.
Yeah.
And he wrote through the looking glass and the rabbit, the hair and all that. It's but to me, he was never one of my favorites or anything.
Yeah.
He did write something that we use in evolutionary biology straight out of Through the Looking Glass.
Mm-hmm.
That we use that actually explains in nature what's going on. But yeah, it's just, I I guess I have a lot of questions. Like I wonder, like how is he regarded? Like how does Oxford see him? Like is he still like, oh, our genius founding father, best, or is it like, yeah, he was not a good guy, but he did write this book?
So they regard him, like, oh, he was very important because he was. If you think about it, the whole world from generation to generation from the 1850s knows the story. All the children read it, right? We saw the movies. There's been a million adaptations, right? You go to Disneyland. So he is seen as, someone who, oh, and by the way, all those books you talked about in what I was researching, he was also inspired. He would write those things when he was feeling distressed over Alice.
Oh, that's
So
interesting.
they're all very, yes. So I think what I'm trying to say is that yes, that he's like a celebrity there, but in the last few decades, with all of the studying of his work, his journals and diaries, and people are not looking the other way, they're openly saying, sounds like he had unholy thoughts, but we don't know if he acted on it.
Right.
There's no proof that he did, so they're trying to say he had these thoughts but never acted on it. Only
God,
because
so
there's
crazy.
nothing to prove it.
That's
So
crazy.
for me, I cannot see, of course, kids don't know, just like I didn't know who wrote it, the backstory to it. But now with adult eyes, knowing the backstory to it, I feel like kind of creepy about it.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, okay, it might be a cool story, but the way I see it, it was written by a pedophile who was obsessed with a little girl who was 8, 7,
Oh
6.
God, yeah.
And that's who Alice is supposed to be based on. So
I'm
that's
curious
how
now.
I see it now.
That's that's funny because now I'm curious. I mean, not that I would. I mean, in my recent past, when I had to give college lectures, I would bring this up. The remember I mentioned the Through the Looking Glass book
Mm-hmm.
story. Um, there was a evolutionary biologist. His name was Lee Van Valen. Okay, he references this from the book. Okay, Van Valen, the scientist from the University of Chicago, he's an evolutionary biologist. He came up with a hypothesis called the Red Queen hypothesis from the
Mm-hmm.
from the book. Okay, because under this hypothesis, the species, have to either run or evolve in order to stay in the same place, or
Mm-hmm.
else they go extinct, as the Red Queen said to Alice in the book Through the Looking Glass. In her
Mm-hmm.
explanation of nature of the Looking Glass land, the Red Queen says, "Now here you see it takes all the running you can do to keep in the same place." So,
Mm-hmm.
if you've ever taken a evolutionary biology where you're studying species and genomes and sex, evolution of sex and species and all that, you
Mm-hmm.
definitely come across the Red Queen hypothesis, and it's taken right from his book. And it's
Mm-hmm.
and it's very interesting when it's dissected and you see the diagrams and it's drawn on the board. Like it's very interesting because it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like without this, like nature does not function correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So he was right about this. That there is genius in the writing. But like I
Mm-hmm.
said, to me personally, he's not an author that I'd be like, hey, I'm excited, whatever. But in pop culture, he's very highly regarded, and that's why I'm so bummed and so surprised to hear this.
Mm-hmm.
Like I wondered, like, what does Oxford think? Like, what do the people of England think? What do these, or does everybody just turn a blind eye and it's like, oh, what happened to 300 years ago, and who cares? And
Yeah. I think the nerds like you and me really intrigued by this, but I do think a lot of people probably don't care, right?
yeah,
And two, I do feel like it's suppressed, because these are biographers, but
right,
historical biographers. So it's not like a mainstream thing.
right,
But, in the last 20 years, it's been slowly a debate. It's become a debate. And it's accepting that he had these thoughts, unholy thoughts, right? But did he act on it? he never did, is
Right.
the general consensus. So then maybe they're just like, oh, but he might have been a little weird, but he didn't act on it, but we don't know that, and when I look at it, I'm like, well, why was he on a boat by himself with 3 little girls? And he had many in his diary and journals, many girlfriends. And I say girlfriends, not like boyfriend and girlfriend, just like little girl who were he called friends.
Yeah.
They were all really, really young. But he was able to, photograph them in semi-nude or nude pictures, whether
God,
artistic,
so
whatever you want to call it. But he never married Leone. So my question is, did he never marry because he just didn't want to deal with older women? Just like to have friends that were underage? So he died a bachelor.
God, so weird.
Yeah. So that is my info for this week.
Well, thank you very much, Mary, for ruining another classic book for me. And if you ever wonder, like, why doesn't Leone read more? Well, there you go.
Right? I
Now I
ruined it for you.
Now I have to burn this one.
Yeah. Well, you don't have to, but when you see a kid with the book or the doll, like, you're going to think of this now.
I know. Now I'm going to be like, fuck.
So what do you do if let's just say it's someone you're really close with who just has a kid playing with Alice? Are you going to tell them the story or keep it to yourself?
Oh, God.
That's a good question.
Yeah, because it's like, look, isn't this ingrained now in the Disney universe? It's like, it's like, what do? You ruin somebody's Disney experience, it's like.
Dun, dun, dun. Yeah. So let's agree to just keep it on the podcast then.
Yeah.
And not ruin people's dreams.
I know. There's definitely genius in the writing. There's definitely some riddles that are fun. Characters that are fun. And you can't, like, deny that, But now that it's like, with this reveal, it's kind of like, that's the worst,
Yeah. And like I said, for me, it was more like, oh, this is about psychedelics and like
Right.
in my eyes, adults making it that. But no, it's far more sinister in the background.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to share that.
That's a good one. That's a crazy story. I'm glad you brought it up because I had not heard of this, and I don't know if this is a popular thing in pop culture. People know. If you do, gosh, I'm so behind, and it's the first I hear of it, honestly.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you mentioned it because it's so creepy. It's interesting, but it's so creepy and on so many levels, and it's kind of like, where were these people? Where are the parents? What does the community think of this?
So many questions.
So many
but
questions.
You yourself, your argument earlier was what? That back then, right? Girls were marrying super young.
Yeah.
Not 6 years old, but they were marrying young, right?
Yeah.
So, maybe I'm just saying, maybe they didn't see it as such a weird thing. But obviously something did happen when she was like 10.
Right.
To where they abruptly were, contact stopped.
Right.
But we'll never know unless someone finds those missing pages of his journal, which is not going to happen.
I know, right? It's possible. It might someday,
No, I guess.
There's 2 possibilities. One, that they were destroyed, and 2, that they were kept. And if they were kept, things that are kept are always surface somehow,
Someday, yeah.
Someday, so who knows? But God, what a dark, dark story. Everybody thanks Mary now. Thanks, Mary.
For ruining it.
For ruining a book for me.
Yeah, so.
No, that was fantastic. That was fantastic.
If I have to think of it now and be like, oh, a pedophile was inspired by his lust for a 6-year-old. You guys should too.
but it's kind of funny. There's a lot of stories like this in pop culture books or films. Like, what was that? It was Cape Fear, right? Cape Fear. You saw that movie?
No, I haven't.
You got to see it. Oh my gosh, what's her name? I know it's Robert De Niro. He plays a con who was in prison for like 20 years and he gets released.
Mm-hmm.
He's tattooed. Like he's like a total prison, guy, lifer, but he's tattooed, and he starts stalking Juliette Lewis, who I believe when they were filming the movie, she was either 18 or 17 years old.
Mm-hmm.
But she was actually like in the movie, she's supposed to be 15 or 14,
Mm-hmm.
So he starts stalking the family and stalking her. So he would go to her high school and pretend to be the drama teacher. And he'd be like, I need you to act out this scene for me, And it was like, he would tell her like, I need you to read Tropic of Cancer, And these books by Henry Miller, are very sexual. And of course she was reading them because she was, going through puberty and learning about sex,
When was this movie released, by the way?
It was in 90, 91 around there, I think. I think he won the Oscar for that character. Maybe she was nominated too, but it's so creepy because he's an older guy, totally sexualizing, hitting on this young girl to the point where he's like, I'm gonna have sex with you, like, eventually, and it comes down to like this big crazy showdown, like ending, but I highly recommend it. It's a very well made movie. It's not horror. It's suspense thriller,
Yeah.
And it's a remake because apparently the original was made in the 50s, or something like that. But yeah, once again, the story of, a guy, taking advantage of a young girl,
Oh, that's a whole Pandora's box.
Yeah.
There's so much. We did the episode on the groupies, and that was all pedophilia, basically, with all these rock stars who are in their 70s now.
Yeah, and I just thought of another one. Was it called Hard Candy, I think?
I don't know.
Who's the actor, the girl who became a guy? She went through a sex change. She goes by Eli now, but it was...
Oh, I know who you're talking about. The girl.
Yes.
Or the guy. Yeah.
And the guy is Patrick Wilson, who's now famous for the Conjuring movies and stuff, But he made this movie called Hard Candy with her. What was her name? Ellie?
I know who you're talking about. She came out as the pregnant girl in high school.
Yes, in Juno. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can't think of her name. But Hard Candy is a hard watch. Like, I watched it once and I had to go take a shower immediately. Like, I'm like, fuck this movie.
Yeah.
It's basically Patrick Wilson as a grown man in his 30s, I think, as a photographer, like hitting on a young girl, But to the point where it's like, they're going to have sex, But what he doesn't realize is that she's underage, but she's a psychopath. And she fucks him up. Great movie. But like I said, a hard watch for me because I don't take that shit lightly,
Yeah.
And afterwards, like, I seriously had to go shower. I'm like, fuck this movie. This is crazy. But very well made, And I think those movies don't happen all that often.
Yeah.
Because they're hard to tell, It's like today, nobody wants to hear a pedophilia story because it happens in their home, So I think it's a hard topic, to write about or to watch on the screen. But I recommend it. Check out. It's so weird that she's not a girl anymore. She's a guy.
He's like, it's so hard and terrible to watch, but I recommend it.
No, because it's a well-made movie. You know what I'm saying?
I know. I'm teasing you.
Like she there's some things that she does where she fucks him up where you're just like, holy shit. Like, I would have never thought of that, but damn, she got him good, Well, there's a lot
and you felt like he deserved it.
Oh, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing. When I saw that movie, I was doing photography. That's why. And there was all these jokes amongst friends, right? What are you doing? Oh, photographing some hot girl. Ha ha ha. What are you doing with her after? And I'm like, fuck you guys,
Yeah.
Like, none of my friends wanted to hear that it's like, hey, I got a production. I got makeup people. I got hair people. I got a stylist. And the girls agent and or boyfriend or husband, So what do you think? What do you think is happening on the photo shoots that I do? So when a movie like that came out, because I actually knew some guys that were shady like that, that were rumored to be doing things like that with girls and younger girls, and I'm just like, fuck these people. I don't know them, But that's why I think it just stuck with me, because it's like, ugh, awful.
Yeah.
But those men do exist. They're predators,
Yeah. And we hear about it on the news all the time.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, I hope that... See, I don't even know how to recover from that.
I'm gonna have to
It's
go,
my fault, though. I picked this subject, right?
Why you do that to me, Demi? Why you do that to me? I mean,
Yeah.
No, but I mean, it's interesting because I never heard of this story, and I think it's very fascinating. Very dark, though. Very dark and very twisted. I mean, just like his writings are very twisted, and somewhat dark for sure,
Yeah.
But God, that's just... It's like how you look back in history, right? And you're like, when was the first kid murdered to the point where like parents were like, okay, kids no longer play on the streets, no longer play with the neighbors, like we have to be like better parents, because some event had to happen where somebody went missing or murdered or something that changed the rules, right? Because back in the day, all you hear is like, yeah, I walked 17 miles in the snow to go to my school with no shoes, and I was 6 years old, whatever, and you're like, what? But today, you don't even let your kids out on the street to go play, because it's not safe, So that's where I think about the story. I'm like, these girls were way too young. One of them questionably at the age where she could have been experiencing womanhood, at a certain point, and I could understand why. But it's like when he's looking at 6 years old, 10-year-old, like, ugh, no, I mean, even a 12-year-old, it's like, no, but at that period in time, it's probably normal, as weird as that sounds,
Yeah. So, there you go. There you go. But yeah, I do thank you guys for listening, and I hope that you learned a lot today, and I'm sorry if some of you are bummed out by the information on the author Lewis Carroll. But if you do want to find out more about it, I literally just touched the tip of the iceberg. So there's a lot of information online if you want to dig deeper into this, and how this bachelor who was fond of young female children died a famous man.
Right.
So thank you, Leone, for joining me.
You owe me, Mary. You owe me.
Yeah. I'm curious to see what feedback I'm going to get on this, ruining childhood memories for everyone. So
I would love to hear from some of our friends in the UK who think of this book as a fond memory. I'd love to hear their feedback and see what they think, because we're in America and we think of things differently. But you have to look at it through the eyes of 1865, which I don't agree with.
Right.
But fucking weird times,
Yeah. I mean, today is weird time too, so we're fucked.
Yeah, that is true.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone, and we hope you join us next time. Bye. That was episode 97 of the Purposely Curious podcast. Make sure to subscribe to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on most podcast platforms, and follow us on social media at Purposely Curious on Instagram and at Purposely C Pod on Twitter. That's Purposely, the letter C, Pod. Until next time, you know what to do.